Cooperative Legacy Project interview number 40, June 27th, 2006. We're visiting with longtime Corson County and District 6 Farmers Union Education Director, Grace Bubbers. Grace, where and when were you born, if you're willing to tell me that?
I was born in Grant County, North Dakota, I suppose at Elgin, and it was in 1931, March of 1931.
Okay. And where was your family originally from?
They were from that same area around New Leipzig and Glenullen.
Okay, and what was your maiden name?
My maiden name was Scheck, S-C-H-E-C-K.
Okay. And did you have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother and one sister.
What are their names?
My brother's name is Gerald, and my sister's name is Gladys, and her married name is Steiger, Gladys Steiger.
Okay, are they out in this vicinity yet?
No. Gladys lives in Seattle, and Gerald lives in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, they went a long way.
Yeah, they did.
Have they been gone a long time, too?
Yes, they've been gone quite a few years. Probably in, I'm trying to think what year they were married.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time.
Okay. What was your father's name?
My father's name was Christian, and he was studying to be a school teacher. And the spring that he was to graduate, he passed away with pneumonia. So I never really got to know him. I was about 4 years old.
Okay. And your mother's name?
My mother's maiden name was Catherine Schmidt,
Mm-hmm.
S-C-H-M-I-D-T.
Mm-hmm.
And she passed away when she was relatively young, too. She was 52.
Okay.
So.
Well, how was that? Did your mother was a widow?
She
relatively young.
Relatively young, and then she married again in, I think it was probably in 1941.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a stepfather after that, and got a stepsister too.
Okay, what was that? What was their name?
Fred Rieker and Janice.
Okay.
And she lives in Wyoming now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She also is a widow.
Okay. And were you on a farm?
Well,
you said your
my grandparents lived on a farm, and then after I lost my father, we lived with my grandparents on the farm until I suppose I was ready to start. I was about the third grade. We moved into Elgin.
Okay.
And we lived in Elgin then.
You have some early memories of life on the farm?
Well, some that aren't so good. I had some uncles on that farm, and they delighted in chasing me with their horses.
With their horses?
Yeah, they were riding, and they delighted in chasing me, and I've been scared of horses ever since.
Did they think it was fair to give you a horse, too?
No, I guess not. I was too little. I'd have probably fell off.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I can remember, what it was like on the farm, how they say about the good old days.
Mm-hmm.
So,
was it still pretty dry at that when you remember, or was it getting better by then?
No, it was during the 36.
Yeah.
Because I was about 5 years old then.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we lived on
the.
With my grandparents. Well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
Dust storms.
I can remember the dust storms. Yeah, it got dark and. Of course, we didn't have electricity, so we couldn't really tell. When it was nighttime, we just went to bed.
Mm.
But I can remember the dirt in the air. So.
Put sheets over windows or anything like that?
Well, I don't know if we put sheets on the windows. I know there was glass in them. I had windows. And I don't know. I can't recall if they ever had to put shades on.
Yeah.
Of course, I was quite young.
Mm-hmm. So you moved into Elgin, in what year would that have been then?
Well, I suppose it was probably in... I was in the second grade. Started school when I was 5. Let's see. Probably in 36 or 37, so maybe we were in town at that time when the dust was so bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. What did you want to do when you were a kid? Did you aspire to anything in particular?
Not that I can recall.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't. Guess I didn't have any dreams.
Okay. What was life like in Elgin? You were there for quite a while?
Well, we were there for about 3 years.
3 years.
We lived in Elgin, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a small town, and we had friends. Of course, it was kind of hard not having a father.
Yeah.
And all the other kids had their fathers, but we managed. And I can remember my mother always going down on Saturdays and buying a roast and cooking a roast for Sunday dinner, and we'd go to church on Sunday morning, and I grew up that way.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I guess it was just like growing up in any town.
Yeah. And you probably didn't attend country school, huh?
Yes, I did.
You did.
My first 2 years.
Your first 2 years.
My
at
first
country
2 years
school,
was in a
okay.
country school.
You don't
yes.
remember the name of it?
No, but it was just about a half a mile from my grandparents, and we had to walk.
Okay.
And the hill was awfully big hill we had to get up to, but that hill wasn't so big after we grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't look so big anymore. Last time I was in that country.
Well, what do you remember from attending country school?
Well, I remember walking to the school.
Were a lot of kids there?
No, there was, I would say, probably about 8
Mm-hmm.
or 10. I had aunts that were attending at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So we always went with them because we lived with my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did know what it was like in a country school.
Okay. And then you went to school in Elgin?
Right, for 3 years.
Was that different than the country school?
Well,
More kids, probably.
more kids, yeah. And we lived 3 blocks from the school, so it was close enough. And we were all little kids, afraid of everybody else. But the school is still there.
Mm-hmm. So for some people, it apparently was a kind of a culture shock going to town to a bigger school.
But we were small enough that I guess I don't think it mattered that much. I don't recall that anyway.
Okay. And do you think you got a good education?
I think so.
Nowadays?
Right.
Okay. High school there. Where did you go to high school at?
I went to Lemon.
Lemon.
Just
okay.
2 years. See, when my mother remarried, we moved to right north of Kelder in South Dakota.
Okay.
And then we went to a country school there for 3
you did.
years.
So how was that country school? You were a little older then.
Well, it was a lot of fun. We had to walk. It was 3 miles. We walked, and it was enjoyable having the students that were there. We had a good teacher, and it was a lot of fun. There was no electricity, and I remember the Christmas programs, how we'd study for weeks ahead of time, and we had a buggy that we had one horse draw it. It was just, well, I don't know what you call it, a buggy, because I always thought it looked like it was an outhouse going down the road. But we had seats in there, and that's how we got back and forth to school when we couldn't walk, but we walked a lot too, and that was 3 miles.
Okay. Okay. And you said high school in Lemon.
Went to Lemon.
Okay.
Yes.
Were there blizzards back in those days?
Oh yes.
Did you ever get caught out at the school when you're 3 miles out?
No, but I remember one time my stepfather come and got us with horses and a sleigh, and the horses had a terrible time getting home through the snow.
Mm.
I can remember that. And we had bricks to keep our feet warm. They bring warm bricks when they left home, but they weren't warm very long. And then there was neighbors along the way, so there was somebody along the way. Not even halfway though, but there was neighbors. So.
Okay. And then high school in
Lemon.
Lemon. Okay.
I went 2 years. And then I got married.
Okay. Did you finish high school then?
No.
No.
I just went 2 years.
Okay. And what year would that have been then?
48.
1948. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And your husband's name was, for purposes of this, I know.
Right. Robert.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, I can.
Sure.
What would you like to know?
Sure.
Well,
Whatever you'd like to tell me.
Well, we met in church. We both went to the same church, and he was my sister's Sunday school teacher. And of course, we were regular churchgoers, and so was he. And first thing you know, we were going to movies together, and then we were married in 1948. And when we were going to the last country school, when we moved from Elgin down to the country, we missed the year of school because we didn't go back to school, and then they didn't have enough days in, so we didn't pass that grade. We had to take that grade over. My brother and I were in the same grade because we started school together. And then he didn't make his 8th grade arithmetic or math, like they say now. And so I waited with him. He went to school for his math, and I stayed out of high school a year. So after I went 2 years, I thought, well, my 4 years were up. I waited for him a year, and it didn't pass 1 year, and I guess I was ready to get married. So
Okay.
we were married in 48, and yeah, I've got 3.
And
A son, John, that is on the home place where my husband and I lived, and a daughter that lives in Waterville, Minnesota. And Gary, my son Gary, is here at the insurance agent at the bank in McIntosh.
Okay. Was your family involved in North Dakota? Were they involved in Farmers Union up there?
No.
Or down here? Earlier on?
No. I never was acquainted with... Well, what I knew about Farmers Union, the first memories of it, that country school we went to,
Mm-hmm.
they always had oyster stews, the Farmers Union. And then when we'd come to school on Monday mornings after the Friday or Saturday night potluck that they had there can always remnants of the oyster stew on the desks. And that's how I became acquainted with Farmers Union. Most of those people were involved, but they didn't have any youth activities or anything that we could get involved in at that time. So
Okay. A lot of you mentioned you've got a son on the ranch,
right.
A lot of farm and ranch families don't have that. Is it difficult to get a son going on the home place?
No, he was born a farmer, and no, he wanted the farm, and of course when we after Robert passed away, I let him have the farm fairly reasonable so he could continue, and I left all the machinery there and everything because he'd been on working with us for 20 years at that point in time. And of course Robert in the last 10 years of his life was not able to work very much because of his illness, and so I felt John deserved the farm.
Mm-hmm. When did you first get involved in the education program?
I would say in 1958. We went to meetings. My in-laws were very involved in Farmers Union, and that's, I guess, how I really got more interested. And then we started going to meetings, and I guess the instigator of all of that was our insurance man, George Seiler, from McIntosh here, who was our insurance agent, and he'd come out and encourage us, and then we'd join, and we went to meetings, and once if you start going to these meetings, they kind of get in your blood.
Mm-hmm. Was there any particular person that you remember getting you fired up, so to speak?
Yeah, Frank Butler and Carol McKenna.
Okay. Want to talk about them a little bit?
Well, Carol and I were very close. We became very close. We worked together about, I suppose, close to 50 years.
Mm-hmm. She was originally from Virginia.
Right. She was from Virginia, and she married Jack, and he was in the service. He was a serviceman, and she came out here, and she really loved it out here. This was home to her, and up till her dying day, it was home. And I think Carol was very instrumental in encouraging me. And then there was Gertrude Hines. And then Frank, of course. I had a lot of respect for Frank, and I thought he was a very smart man. Flew with him in the airplane more than once. Wasn't afraid to fly with him. And then
some people were.
Yeah, I know they were, but I wasn't. And then, of course, then his family was involved, and his children, and then Jack and Carol McKenna's kids, and Arlene Schley was the one that really helped me along a lot after I met her in the youth program and going to meetings, and camps.
What was the youth program and the camping program like back in those days, in the late 50s, early 60s?
We used to have a county camp or a picnic, and it'd be a one-day thing. Of course, most county camps are. And we'd go to parks, and everybody'd bring food, and we'd fight the mosquitoes, and we had speakers come, but now I don't think you see much of that anymore. Not in this area, anyway.
Are there a lot less kids around here now, or?
Yes, it's hardly. Well, there's students, every year that move away, and then of course some more come, but there isn't too many young farm children, and they're also involved in sports, and sometimes that takes precedence over Farmers Union. Not in my book, but.
As you looked over the years, do you see changes in the amount of support there was available from the state office as far as for the youth program, what you would have up here?
I can't say that there's been less. I have never had problem with getting any help or anything out of the state office.
You're talking about Arlene. You want to mention some of the other education directors, what kind of relationship they had with you and with the folks up in this part of the state?
Well, there's some I'd rather not mention. This isn't going to be on tape, is it?
Well, you can, if you want to remove anything, you'll get a transcript.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not going to do anything with anything.
Yeah.
But
I guess.
You had any favorites that you really enjoyed working with?
I enjoyed working with Brian and especially now with Bonnie. And I enjoyed Arlene because she helped me a lot and was always there when you needed some help. And Bonnie is the same way now. I think Bonnie has been just something that is unreal. And she loves her job, and she does a super job. But I got along fine with Brian, too. I can't remember some of the others.
What about cooperatives here in Corson County? Were you always members of the co-ops here? And what co-ops were you members of?
We were members of the Thunderhawk, Thunderhawk Co-op, which is now associated with Lemon, and we did some business in McLaughlin. And, of course, my husband was an REA director for 27 years with Morro Grande out of Timber Lake. And so we were pretty much involved with co-ops all the time.
You want to talk a little bit about that rural electric involvement? Did he also represent them on the Basin Board?
No, he
didn't. He did get up there some, didn't
well, he always went up to the meetings, but he was just a board member. He kind of declined a lot of those special appointments because he had a hearing problem. And so, but he was a very devoted board member, and one of the hardest things I ever did was when I sent the last bill in to Morro Grande before I left the farm. It's one of the hardest things I've had to do.
Did you ever go along on any of or did he ever go on any of the rural electric lobbying trips to Washington?
Yes, he did. He went, I know one time they flew down and there was a terrible storm in Chicago. They couldn't land, and it was a very bumpy ride. And he said nothing was moving in Chicago because of the storm. They were above the clouds, and I remember that time in particular. He went on a lot of trips like that. He spent some time he went to Pierre every year when they had their annual meeting and district meetings, and he's put in a lot of time with the RA and the co-ops.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, when he was defeated, then the next year they gave him a light with a meter in it. So,
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen one of those or not.
No, I don't think so.
So, and then he was, like I said, he was a board member for 27 years. And he served as County Farmers Union president for a good number of years, too.
Mhm. How difficult was it to, for getting Farmers Union members together out here? These are wide open spaces out here. It's like there's people on one end of the county and people on the other end, and I'm not sure what's in between.
Well, people were more involved then because there wasn't so much else going on.
Mhm.
And it wasn't hard to get people together because out here you have to, no matter where you go, is a long ways.
Mhm.
So, and people didn't seem to mind that.
We talked about the rural electric cooperative. Do you remember getting electricity on the farm? What that was like?
Yes, I do. That was in, I believe, if I'm right, in 1951 or early 52. Because our daughter was born in 51, and we still had to light the lantern every night when we got up with her. So it would have to have been in 52 or 53, somewhere in there when we got electricity. Yeah, I can remember. We had a refrigerator, but there was a fellow in Watauga that sold refrigerators, and he gave a good deal. This was before we had electricity, but it was nice to have the day we could plug it in.
Okay, so you had it sitting there sometime
Right.
before you got electricity,
Right.
so you were ready for it.
We were ready for it.
That was your first choice, a refrigerator?
Right. It was an International Harvester.
Okay.
It lasted a long time.
How long?
Well, it was still in working condition when I left the farm,
Oh, okay. Okay.
but I won't say it's still there now.
Let's see here. Your kids all went through the youth program, did they? I know Gary did.
Gary did, and Alta Lee did. That wasn't John's cup of tea.
So he was just kind of, I'm going to be a farmer.
He's going to be a farmer, and that was it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now the other two were very active, though, weren't they?
Yes, they were. They both became torchbearers, but John never. Just wasn't interested in that.
And Gary wasn't he on our field staff for a year?
Yes,
or
he
two?
was. Yes, and he worked with Cindy Domenico on the national camps one year too.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was he on summer staff or not?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
And he was also a junior advisory council member.
Okay. What years would those have been now?
Maybe 80 or 81.
Yeah.
Somewhere around in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if he was really on summer staff. He was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he might have been. Can't remember. That's a long time ago.
Yeah. That would have been when Ken Bergen was.
Right, he worked with. Yeah, that's right. Because he lived with Ken for a while.
Oh, okay. Okay. And you want to talk about the Torchbearer program, the various achievement programs?
Well, we never had too many people out here, that really would follow through and go through the Torchbearer program from this area. There was a few, and but I can see how that has changed over the years when we used to have 30 and 40 torchbearers, and now we're down to 5 and 6. And the camping program, I don't know how I would say it was changed. I think there's more interest in it in ways that other people have brought new ideas in that have been an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't know. I know up in our area we don't have district camp anymore because to go down to Hermosa down there at Bob Marshall, it's almost, well, it's over 200 miles one way.
Used to go up to North Dakota.
Right, we were up at Hart Butte.
Yeah.
That was up at Elgin, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was within 5 miles where I was born and raised.
Mm-hmm. There was quite a bit of Farmers Union activity up in that area?
Yes, there still is.
Yeah.
They still have that camp going, but...
That's one that the state organization owns, is that right? Up there?
They own
North
the camps,
Dakota? Yeah.
they own the buildings, but they don't own the land.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the way it used to be, that it was parkland.
Oh, okay.
Because there's vehicles that went through there all the time.
Okay.
So...
And you have attended a number of state camps. You want to talk about that experience a little bit? You didn't go this year.
No, I didn't go this year because after the award I got stuck in Minnesota and didn't get home in time to go. But I probably wouldn't have gone anyway. But they called me from state camp and said they missed me, and I said no more than I missed being there. That's something that I looked forward to every year, was being down there with those young people and see, as these campers kept coming over the years, how they have improved and changed. But that was my highlight of the summer, was going to state camp.
Okay. And you apparently don't share the concern that some folks have that kids are getting worse all the time or something.
No, I don't think they're getting worse. They're just a little bit harder to handle. As we get older, maybe we're getting a little more.
They perhaps have some different experiences
Right.
than kids did 30,
Right.
40 years ago.
Or that we did when we did. Yeah. And no, I don't think there's any bad kids. They aren't born bad, I don't think. Just get in with the wrong people.
Mm-hmm. What's your perspective on the planning of education programs? You've served on the Education Council, and they still have some involvement. And of course, there's some of the young people, the Junior Advisory Council, are involved. How does that process develop from your viewpoint?
Well, they have to be interested in being involved and want to continue, and that can start way back when they come to camp for the second time. And then as they get older, they want to keep involved, and then they want to keep going on and on. And by us not being able to get down to district camp down in the hills, I think we're losing something, because our kids come to county camp and then they don't manage to get to district camp, and then they're not so apt to want to go to state camp. But if you keep them going all the time, they become so involved, they, just like me, I just don't want to ever give it up. So, but then you hope they will continue after they get out of state camp and go on to all states too.
Mm-hmm. Being a volunteer takes commitment. How did you find the time to...
Well, I'm not the best housekeeper in the world, and my family came first, and I had a good mother-in-law who thought she could take care of the children and was very helpful to me and was always willing to help me with them so I could go. And when Robert became a board member on Morro Grande, he said, well, I guess you're going to have to give up your job. And I said, you want to bet? And I didn't give up mine, and he continued on for 27 years too. So...
you both attended a number of state conventions over the years, of course, and national conventions too.
Right.
You want any experiences that you can recall from those years that were particularly fun or interesting?
Well, probably the first one we went to was very interesting because M.W. was still there, M.W. Thatcher, and he gives such a rousing speech, and it's just people like that you listened to and got involved in that made things interesting. And we missed very few conventions, and I missed the one this February for obvious reasons. My health wouldn't let me go, but national conventions have been great. We've had a lot of good experiences. some weren't always good. The first time we ever went to a national convention was in Denver. And as we were eating our meal in the hotel, we had ordered, I can't remember what, but I had ordered lamb chops. And then before our meal came, they fired the waitress. And so we never did get our meal. That was a bad experience right off the bat. But the advantage of some of the people we've seen and got to meet, and then we've went some of the fly-ins too.
How was that?
That was great. We went on a young couples fly-in one time, and we were probably the youngest couple on there. And that was a few years ago. Yeah. And I don't think people think they have the time anymore to be involved, do those kind of things. So.
Did you get a chance to meet anybody when you were in D.C. that time? Sometimes did they participate in teams for lobbying?
Yes, we did. We lobbied, and right now I can't think of the man's name, but he was from Oklahoma, and there was chance that he would be a candidate for president, and then he was killed in an airplane crash. And he'd made such an impression on Robert, and he said that he'd have sure been a good president. But I can't think of his name right offhand now. That's been quite a few years ago. And but I think he was from Oklahoma. And then, of course, seeing our own representatives there, and senators, Senator McGovern was there, and Aberesk, and got to meet them. And we've just met a lot of people. And we got to shake hands with them. So.
We've, I guess those of us who have been around the program have heard a number of stories about coming from local and state camps. Do you know of any stories you'd like to talk about, things that happened that you remember?
Good or bad?
Good or bad?
Well, the bad thing that I can remember was when the Janish boy got killed. That at that point in time, we had 2 state camps. One first week in June, and then we went back in the second week of June. And my son Gary was serving on the council of that, the same council that Bob Janish was on. And I didn't always go to both camps, but just being there at that camp, knowing that somebody was gone, and seeing how the young people all handled themselves was, I suppose, kind of an encouragement or to keep going on. But it was hard.
Yeah. It's kind of an emotional thing, even when nobody gets killed, for those junior advisory council members, both
That's
the outgoing and incoming.
Incoming, right. They know it's the end. But then they always want to come back one more time. So. And
I think they named an award for
Bob Janish, yes. Yeah. And it came from District 1, was the instigator of that. Joan Hafner started it because this young man was from her area, and she saw him grow up and was a friend of the family. And then 2 years I can remember, the same girl was a diabetic and didn't eat her meals but ate candy. And then we had to help her in a hurry, too. That's one thing I remember. And I remember when I was down, Gary was about 6 or 7 years old. Robert came down to state camp the last night, and it was the night that we had snow down there. And
snow at state camp?
Snow at state camp.
Okay.
It was on a Thursday night, and that's when Joni Olson was the education director. And Gary fell in the creek. So it was cold that night, but Joni took him in her cabin with her, and they tried to keep him warm with extra blankets, but I remember that too.
Okay. How important do you think cooperative education is? In terms of the interest of the cooperatives, do you think that's significant for them, that they need to do that?
I think it's very important. Education is always important, and I'd like to see the co-ops push more toward getting the people involved. Nowadays, not even the board members or Farmers Union members or the managers either, what Farmers Union is for, and they forget where they got started. So,
you received the Meritorious Service Award a few years ago. Was that a big thing for you?
Yes, it was. I didn't think I deserved it.
Yeah, and then the Minnie Lovinger Award here just recently. You want to talk about those?
Well, that was a great experience. There was, like I said, there was only one bad thing about that. I had a grandson graduating that same day, and I did not get to his graduation. But yes, as far as being honored, I just didn't think I deserved it. Didn't think I'd done that much. So,
how many grandchildren do you have? You want to talk about them?
Well, let's see. I think I have 11. 11 grandchildren. And my daughter has 5. John has 2 and 4 stepchildren. So that 11.
Okay, Gary?
Doesn't have any family.
Don't have any?
No.
Okay. How has the community around here changed over the years? You've been here. Well, let's say Morristown too. Let's just say Corson County, because you've been around a little bit.
Yeah.
What year did you move in here from the?
I think it was in 97.
Okay.
So I've been here 7-8 years.
And you were out there for a while after Robert passed.
Right. I moved. Right? He passed away in 93, and then I moved in 97. I moved to town here.
Okay.
So. Yeah, the country has changed. Towns have changed. There's buildings falling down that need to be removed, and of course, the big tragedy here in the county in McIntosh was losing the courthouse.
Mm-hmm. When was that now? Not very long ago.
No, it was in. Get the paper.
Okay.
It was the first part of April.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oops.
That's just some articles out of there.
Okay. Fire destroys county courthouse.
Right.
April 13th issue. Okay.
Yeah. And then in December, the last.
What are they going to do?
Well, I think they're going to rebuild, I'm hoping. And, of course, we also lost a county shed in December.
Okay. And this is somebody burned that building.
That's right, it was set.
Okay.
Yeah, both of those buildings were set by the same person.
Okay.
The county shed is up again.
All right.
So.
Just vandalism or
arson? Arson. He intentionally set it.
Okay.
So
going to be going on trial at some point?
Well, sometime in July, I guess they're going to. They've had a hearing, and then right now he's at the psychic ward, and they took him to Yankton or somewhere down Sioux Falls or wherever they have to go for psychiatric help.
Okay.
So.
What sort of advice would you give someone today who wanted to become active either in cooperatives out here or in Farmers Union?
Well, I would encourage him to become involved in Farmers Union for what Farmers Union is trying to do for the farmers to help them stay on the farm. Mm-hmm. And but it's pretty hard in a community like this. And this year it's so dry. Some people say it's worse than the 30s.
Yeah, it's very dry out there.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to convince them to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's some grain being cut around here. Is that being cut for hay? It looked pretty scraggly to me, and it was still green. It looked to me like maybe they're cutting it for hay. It didn't look ripe enough to be cutting for grain.
No, I think it's cut for hay.
Yeah.
I saw a fellow put in put a sign up in the cafe yesterday, and he was selling he had a few bales, and he's selling them right out of the field because he said he doesn't even want to have to waste the gas to haul them in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what's the water situation like up here? You don't have a rural water system, do you?
No, we don't have a rural.
I noticed the Missouri is extremely dry as you come across there and see how well, you see, you can't see it.
You can't see it. Well, I don't know what it is like around here, but I think further south, there's wells that are going dry right south of Keldern. Somebody said there was some that they're going to have to do something.
Mm-hmm. Is it worse around here than it was here 3-4 years ago when we had the Hands Across South Dakota thing?
Well, I wouldn't say it's any better.
Yeah.
It's probably about the same or worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but I heard west, where they had all that snow early, best crop they've ever had around Bowman. Heard that on the news yesterday. So,
okay. Would you describe yourself as an optimist or a pessimist?
How do I answer that? I don't know. Well, an optimist is one that always thinks it's going to be good, right? Things can work out.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you'd say I'm an optimist then.
Okay. I haven't yet run into anybody who wanted to describe themselves. They were pessimistic about some things, but but they didn't want to describe themselves as a pessimist. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? I'd like to give you a last open-ended question there. If there's something I didn't ask you that you'd like to pull forth on?
Not that I can think of right now. I got to have time to think about these things,
Okay. All right. In that event, we'll just close it down here then.
Okay.
We've been visiting with Grace Bubbers. Thank you for participating in the Cooperative Legacy Project.